Good afternoon, everybody. Pigskin Pete here. Happy Thursday to everybody. Today, what I'm going to do is lighten it up a little bit. Instead of going after the Gamecocks on a daily basis and talking trash about the SEC, I'm going to do something a little bit lighter that somebody brought to my attention that I thought was interesting. And it's going to be a list of the best places in the country to go watch a game based on tradition, size of stadium, pre-game experience, the whole package. You cannot make a list like this without offending somebody. Because obviously, to really get a good opinion on what the game day experience is like, you will have had to have visited all these places on game day to make that, a valid point. But I do think that there's some very obvious ones throughout the country that probably is not a shock to anybody. And I did this list, broke it down conference by conference of what I think the most prolific game day and stadium experiences are throughout the country. I broke it down by conference. And some of these I've been to, some of them I haven't. But here's my list. The Big Ten. So the Big Ten has some teams with really rich tradition and some great and very big stadiums. Obviously, Ohio State, the Horseshoe is one of the oldest stadiums in the country, and of course they added on to it, in recent years to add more seating. I think it holds somewhere right around 100,000, maybe over 100,000, and of course everybody in the country knows that that is one of the premier game day places in the country. Penn State. Penn State, another school, a lot of history, big stadium, rabid fan base. Penn State's really a football school, I would say. I mean, they're, have a lot of success in basketball, over the years as well. But I think that Penn State is a rabid fan base and probably one of the toughest places to play in the country at night, when they have that white out and that place gets rocking. So Penn State's definitely on that list. Michigan. Now, I can't stand Michigan. Not sure why. I really don't know why. I don't have any reason not to like Michigan. There's some schools that you just don't like for some reason, and Michigan's always been that way with me. I just don't like them. Don't know why. But they had the Big House, one of the biggest stadiums in the country, a huge alumni that's scattered throughout the country. Very, very loyal fan base, Michigan, and a very, very cool stadium. So Michigan is definitely the third in the Big Ten. Listen, I didn't list these in any sort of order, so I'm not going from 15 down to the best. I'm just going, these are all random. No particular order at all. The Big 12. I would have to say definitely Oklahoma is probably the premier spot to when you think of stadium and game day experience in the Big 12, and of course Texas. A school that hasn't had a lot of success of late, but still a huge stadium with a very rabid fan base, and they love their football down there at the University of Texas. So Oklahoma and Texas are the two that I'm picking out of the Big 12. The Pac-12. This could probably piss some people off. In my opinion, and I'm not saying there's not other great fan bases and stadiums to go to and have a great game day experience, but I think when it comes to the top tier stadiums and experiences together, it's Southern Cal and everybody else. You could make an argument in there for UCLA, I guess. I mean, don't they play in the Rose Bowl? The Rose Bowl's, an iconic stadium, but it's an old stadium. It really needs renovating. And, UCLA, let's be honest here. They've had some success over the years and had some good football teams, but they're sort of like Georgia Tech to me. I mean, they're better than Georgia Tech football-wise, but they remind me of just this school that's really more caught up in their academic, achievements than they are about football. Football is something they like to go to do on Saturday to waste some time, but it's not like UCLA's super passionate about football. And I think that stadium's in Pasadena. I don't even know if it's on campus. I'm sure it's not. So I don't know. I think it's Southern Cal and everybody else in the stadium game day experience category. So that's it for the Pac-12.
SEC.
SEC has a lot of them. Listen, I know I'm going to get pushback on this because there's going to be a couple I leave out that people are going to be like, what about this one? What about that one? What about this one? What about that one? Well, I can't just list every school in the SEC or the Big Ten or the ACC for that matter. So you're going to have to just take this for what it's worth. I know I'm going to piss some people off, and I'll explain why a couple of them that I'm going to leave out, the reason I'm leaving them out. Let's see, number one, I will say Alabama, clearly a great stadium, great game day experience. It speaks for itself. The history, tradition, the whole 9 yards. Alabama is a state without a professional sports team, and they love their football. So that's on my bucket list. A lot of these schools are. Before I die, I would like to go travel to most of these places at some point and see a game on game day as a college football fan. And Alabama is one of them. You got Alabama in there, another team in the state of Alabama, Auburn. Great stadium, great fan base, great tradition. And again, in a state without a professional sports team where football is king. So Auburn definitely makes the list. LSU, Death Valley. Now, I've never been, now everyone knows that this is one of the coolest places to go because it's in Louisiana. And anybody who's ever been there, I've never been to an actual LSU game at Death Valley. I have been to a bowl game when Clemson played LSU in Atlanta on New Year's Eve one year. And that was an epic game. Clemson won in overtime. But anyway, listen. So the LSU fans that traveled up to Atlanta to watch that bowl game, we hung out with a lot before the game, and they're fun. It's a fun fan base. I mean, they get all dressed up like it's Mardi Gras and wear beads and these crazy hats, and they like to drink, and they were cool. I mean, they didn't bother me at all. I mean, other than the fact that they thought that they were superior to Clemson, and they thought I was crazy for saying that Taj Boyd and Sammy Watkins were going to wax that ass, and they did. But other than that, a really cool fan base. I can imagine going to a game at night in that atmosphere with these drunk Cajuns. It would be really fun. And it's a great stadium, too. Good old Rocky Top, University of Tennessee. Had to put them on the list. One place I definitely want to go see a game, even though that ugly orange and the checkered pattern, it's hard to watch that on TV. It makes your eyes hurt. But, I mean, rich tradition, great fan base, cool stadium, cool place, would love to go. University of Tennessee, good old Rocky Top. University of Georgia, another school, very close to Clemson in proximity. I think it's only about 70 miles apart or something. It's only like maybe an hour drive from Clemson, Athens is. So big stadium, rabid fan base, the same talking points I'm giving all these other schools. I'm going to end it there for the SEC, and I know I'm going to piss some people off with this. I didn't put South Carolina on the list for a couple of reasons. Their stadium is nice. I've been to a couple of games there, actually. It seats the same amount of people as Clemson's does. It's a much newer stadium. Obviously, Death Valley is a very old stadium that they've added on to. But South Carolina's football stadium is not on their campus. It's right next to the fairgrounds. It's between the fairgrounds and the DMV. And, so they don't have a 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100-year tradition of that stadium. It's not on campus. It's fairly new. Is it a great place to go watch a football game? Absolutely it is. But I'm not putting it in the category for tradition reasons and how new it is compared to all these other stadiums that I'm listing right now. So the same reason I didn't put Texas A&M on there. Texas A&M, huge stadium. I don't know how much they spent building that stadium not that long ago. I mean, it's a huge stadium. And it's really cool. It looks cool on TV, the crowd and the military guys swinging the ropes around and all that crazy stuff. And it's Texas, and they love their football down there in Texas, and Johnny football, blah, 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 blah. But that stadium's not old enough. And there's not enough tradition there for me to put it on the list. The other one I left out was Florida. That one almost made the list for me. I've never been down to the swamp. I've seen games on TV there. I think it probably is a great place to go watch a game and tailgate and all of that. And I'm sure their fans are very loyal. But when I watch a game on TV from Florida, when I watch a game on TV from Georgia, LSU, Alabama, Auburn, I don't see I don't think that they're on that level. I just don't. Man, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Last but not least, ACC. So there's really three that really jump out to me in the ACC, and they're all very obvious. And there's one of them that I thought about putting on there, but had to leave off for a very specific reason. Obviously, Clemson. Death Valley is one of the most iconic stadiums in the country, rich tradition, and anybody who's never been there for a game, I suggest that you go if you can go at some point in your life. I've been to several stadiums around the country that are great, and I know I'm biased as a Clemson fan, but I've had other fan bases tell me that have come there that it was one of the greatest game day experiences that they've ever had. So Clemson's obviously on the list. Florida State's another one. Tallahassee has a huge stadium with a great tailgate, a lot of tradition, the whole 9 yards there too. I've never been to Florida State. I really would like to go see a game there at some point, though. The third is Virginia Tech. Now, I have been to a couple of Virginia Tech games. The last one I went to is when they played Clemson. I want to say it was like 4 or 5 years ago. It was a top 10 matchup or a top 12 matchup. They were both highly ranked at the time. I think it might have been Taj Boyd's last year, and Sammy Watkins and all those guys, DeAndre Hopkins. And I'll tell you what, that place is awesome. It really is a fun experience. First of all, the fans, unlike some of the other places I've been, were super friendly to outsiders, during the tailgating process and all that, and even in the stands. And that place gets rocking, when they play Enter the Sandman. And they're really, really passionate about football up there at Virginia Tech. That's a great place to go. One of the best places in the country, for sure. I left Miami out for obvious reasons. Miami's stadium is the Dolphin Stadium, and it's, 30 minutes away from the campus or something like that. I can't put them in there. Is a sold-out Miami game rocking and fun to go to? I'm sure it is. But, until they get their own stadium with their own mark on Miami's campus or really, really close to it, closer than this one is, I can't put them on that list. I just can't. So that's it. I know I pissed some people off. Try not to cry about it. Oh yeah, I almost forgot, because they don't belong to a conference. Notre Dame, the Golden Homers, or Golden Domers, or whatever you want to call. Another team I just don't like. Never have, probably never will. And the fact that they think that they are better than everybody else in the country and refuse to join a conference because of all that TV money they're making. I did go to one of the most epic Clemson games in recent history. On my birthday, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I can't even remember, the famous Clemson and Notre Dame game that was played in a hurricane. I actually left my house in Charleston as a hurricane was hitting. The whole state was completely flooded, and drove 3.5 hours from my house to Clemson in a hurricane to watch that game. And anybody, I'm sure people remember that game. It was epic. Clemson won on the last play of the game, and that was a top 10 matchup at the time. I think Clemson was ranked in the top 5, and Notre Dame was ranked in the top 5 or 10 at that point. Epic game. And the Notre Dame fans that came, and they brought a lot of them too, all the way to Clemson, which was pretty unbelievable. Some of them were cool. Other ones that we ran into, before the game in Clemson, very arrogant group of people, and sort of left a sour taste in my mouth. But I did meet some cool ones. But Notre Dame, clearly one of the best stadiums and traditions in the country. And you can let me know what you think of my list. And, depending on what team you're a fan of or how many of these places you've been, you're probably going to say, well, what about this one? What about that one? You forgot about this one. You forgot about that one. Well, I can't name 50 of them. So these are let's say, I don't know how many that was, like 13, the top 13, I would think. And if you want to add another couple in there, Florida, maybe, then fine, good for you. Anyway, have a good one. Pigskin Pete checking out.